Okay, I see that we have a good amount of people here, so I think we'll get started. So, hi everyone. Thank you for being here today. I'm Matt Heenan, the Director of Sales in the Global Business Development Team at the American Museum of Natural History. Welcome to the fourth webinar now in the Content Development and Engagement series hosted by Global Business Development. Now, one of the things that we're most known for at the American Museum of Natural History is, of course, the Hayden Planetarium and many of the planetarium shows that we produce at the museum. Shows like Passport to the Universe, Cosmic Collisions, Dark Universe, Worlds Beyond Earth, and our newest planetarium show, Encounters in the Milky Way. Today, we're going to be talking about just how these planetarium shows come to life. From the drawing board right through to the fully realized production. How we stay true to the science while adding the artistry and the vision to transport you to the furthest edges of the cosmos and teaching you quite a few things along the way. And to do this, I'm very pleased to introduce today's speaker, Vivian Trakinski, Senior Director of Science Visualization at American Museum of Natural History. Vivian's worked on many of these shows, including the newest show, Encounters in the Milky Way, and I've been very honored to work with Vivian over the last, well, my entire time here. So Vivian, hello, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. And hi, everyone. I'm excited to share a little bit of the behind the scenes action of how we put together encounters in the Milky Way. So to do that, I'm going to share my screen and just share a quick PowerPoint with you all. There, I hope you can all see that. Looking good, Matt?
Looking good.
All right, great. So I titled this presentation, The Art and Science of Encounters in the Milky Way, because I think that's what makes our shows so special, that it really is a marriage of art and science that is made possible because the medium of these shows, the data that our artists visualize, is the medium that the scientists are generating in the course of their research. So our shows display cutting edge research that scientists are generating as they observe the natural world using digital tools and technologies, and as they create models and simulations that allow us to understand the behaviors of nature and the evolution of the natural world, including the entire universe. And because these shows are by nature digital productions, we needed to replace the old Hayden Planetarium, which opened in 1935, with a then cutting-edge, state-of-the-art Zeiss star projector with a planetarium fueled by a digital projection system.
I just going to cut in briefly. I forgot to tell everyone, please use the Q&A feature during this session, and if you put your questions down there, then Vivian will be happy to answer as many questions as possible at the end of the session. So sorry for interrupting, Vivian, but everyone please use the Q&A feature.
Just a little bit of history of our shows since the opening of the new Hayden in 2000. The first show that we produced was Passport to the Universe, and that was a timeless story about our place in space. We revisualized Passport in 2018 with all new data that was available since we first created the show and new visualization techniques. Because the story was so timeless, we didn't have to touch a word of Tom Hanks's beautiful narration, which was terrific. I think of Encounters as sort of another update to that story, because not only are we showing our place in space in 3 dimensions, our location in the cosmos, but we've added a 4th dimension of time to this story. Our space shows are very widely distributed. They're licensed to about 160 institutions across 40 countries right now, and more than 15 million people have seen them at AMNH alone. So every one of our space shows starts with a scientific concept. And Encounters started with a proposal from our curator, Jackie Faraday, for a show on our dynamic universe. So you can see here her tagline was, "Discover how motion sculpts the cosmos." So this was an exciting prospect for the production team because, of course, we love to portray action in the universe. A show that is based on dynamics and movement is very exciting for us. And it didn't take long for us to start working on the show and to start visualizing some of the science that Jackie brought forward, to realize that the most exciting thing about this story was not the motion itself, but the encounters that the motion inevitably leads to. So whether it be impacts or mergers or flybys, these gravitational events are what really sculpts the cosmos. And it makes for a very exciting story. So Encounters in the Milky Way was born. So Jackie went on in her treatment to say that recent advancements in our ability to map the cosmos have led to a new understanding of the dynamic nature of the universe we lived in. So of course we needed a map to produce this show. And luckily, AMNH curates one of the most complete 3D atlases of the cosmos in existence. It's called the Digital Universe Atlas. And it enables us to sort of plot out our space shows. This atlas is available to anybody freely on our open source platform called Open Space, which we use to fuel our live planetarium shows. But as I said, it also serves as sort of the storyboard and shot blocking platform for us for these shows. After all, the universe, the cosmos, is our set for the stories that we tell. And so having this three-dimensional atlas of the universe really enables us to study the data sets and the stories. So we just output this short movie to give you a sense of some of the data sets that went into Encounters. So starting here, that armature is sort of a placeholder for what we call our Oort cloud, which is sort of the sun's gravitational extent in the cosmos. And here we're bringing on stars from the Gaia mission. Gaia mapped nearly 2 billion stars, which is essential to the story that we tell in Encounters. And here you can see we just have ways of measuring distances in the cosmos so we know how far out our camera is pulling. Here we're visualizing nearby stars. And you can see by visualizing those data that they are clumped in interesting ways. It turns out those are young stars that have yet to leave their nurseries. And then we can map dust lanes in the Milky Way, and even our orbit around the galactic center. So our solar system has made 20 orbits around the galaxy. And as we say in the show, that makes us 20 galactic years old. Of course, we have not been around for most of that time. And as we pull the camera even further out, we can see these stellar streams that scientists have observed that provide evidence for an ongoing merger between our galaxy and a smaller galaxy known as the Sagittarius Dwarf Galaxy, which has been going on for between 5 and 6 billion years. And all of these data sets and elements are very important plot points in Encounters in the Milky Way. But of course, everything that I've shown you here has been static. And to do a story about dynamics, we really need to show those dynamics. So we work with scientists to visualize their models and their simulations. Here's one example, a very important example, obviously, for a show about the Milky Way. This is a dynamic model of our Milky Way galaxy over billions of years. And as you can see, we showed not only stars, which are visible to the naked eye, but the dust and gas, which is really invisible to human vision. So we have visualized those elements as if we were looking at them in the infrared. Infrared is a technology that's used to measure heat rather than visible light. And so scientists use it to detect objects in space and features that we can't detect with optical light. So in order to sort of have a reality check of this visualization, we compared it to many, many images from the James Webb Telescope. The Webb Telescope has an infrared camera on it. So by comparing our model to these other distant galaxies, we can see how similar it is. We can see features that are familiar to us. And that serves as both a check on the science as well as on the art of visualization. Another scene in the show is built around our Oort cloud that I mentioned earlier. So our Oort cloud is really a debris field, the remnants of the formation of our sun 4.5 billion years ago. And it's about a light year and a half in every direction. And scientists now think of it as the extent, the full extent of our solar system, and it is well beyond the orbit of Pluto. So in the story, we talk about how not only our star has an Oort cloud, but probably all stars, certainly most stars out in the cosmos have their own Oort clouds, which brings our neighbors much closer together. And over time, as all of these systems are moving around, we are much more likely to have encounters with our neighbors. And so we talk about some of the encounters that we expect to happen in millions of years. And this is our director, Carter Emhart's style frame for what our Oort cloud should probably look like. This was based on our best knowledge at the time when we started the production 2 years ago. And you can see our solar system in the center there, and then there's sort of some geometry that is created by the physics and the gravity of our system. But something really interesting happened when we actually got together with a scientist named David Desvorny out of the Southwest Research Institute to visualize a model that he was creating of our Oort cloud and how it behaves. And this is what we found as our technical director, John Parker, visualized this model. Something really strange was revealed. If you can all see that S shape in the center, sort of a spiral there in the center, to me, it looks like a bat signal out in the cosmos. But it was totally unexpected. When John first showed it to Jackie, she thought it was probably some corruption in the data. They brought it to David, who also was surprised to see that. But they checked the model, they checked the data, they checked the visualization techniques, and they all concluded that this was actually a structure in the inner Oort cloud. And it was a scientific discovery that was widely covered in the press. So our shows before, have generated papers about visualization techniques and new ways of visualizing data, but never before have we actually made a scientific discovery. And I thought that was really important to share with you all because to me, it's just a powerful illustration of how close the science and the art of these productions are, is that there is a place where they completely overlap. And in the process of visualizing these data to make them cinematic and compelling, there's also the possibility of discovering something new. And to me, that's incredibly exciting. In our shows, we also like to portray the process of science and the excitement of space exploration. So we tend to include spacecraft out in the cosmos, mapping the universe. So this is one example. This is the Gaia spacecraft. As it's being assembled in our clean room. And our modeler, Ryan Cheng, spent months and months on the Gaia spacecraft, checking many references. It was really driving him a little bit crazy. We even got on Zoom calls with some of the engineers that worked on the original mission and used different software techniques to test out materials to make sure that their reflections were accurate to the original materials on the actual spacecraft. Our director, Carter, likes to remind us all that we are producing these shows in the tradition of our famous dioramas, and we want to be as close to the actual models and to the actual data as we can get, that we have a responsibility to our audiences to really bring authenticity and accuracy to these scenes. But of course, visuals are not the only thing that is important in a planetarium show. And certainly in ours, we take great pride in our soundtracks. The music is always orchestral, and very fine composer Robert Miller has composed the scores for the last 5 shows, including Encounters in the Milky Way. And I thought it would be fun to just share this little video that was recorded during the recording in London at Abbey Road Studios, where the Beatles did their recording with musicians from the London Symphony Orchestra. And there's Robert, the composer, who's conducting. And he really is such a passionate collaborator. And here you can really feel the storytelling. This is about leaving the cosmos, heading back towards home. Robert loves a French horn. But music is not the only part of the score that's important. Our sound designer, Robert Langman, spends months, excuse me, developing sound effects for the show, which we then spend 6 weeks overnight from 6 p.m. till 2 a.m. mixing with our very fine mixer, Peter Helensky, in the dome to create a balanced and spatialized sonic experience, which in my mind is so important to these shows. Without the sound design, without the audio, they just feel like big screensavers. But the audio gives it dimensionality and it gives it an emotional resonance that really creates the immersion of these shows. And of course, there's our narrator, who's crucial to the experience of these shows because these journeys are really led by a known figure. And in this case, it's Pedro Pascal, and he does a beautiful job, I think, with the narration, creating an intimate experience, even while we are journeying through the most expansive space imaginable. So, to show you how all of these elements come together, I'm just going to play a short promo for the show to give you an idea of how these things come together.
Beyond the orbit of the moon, 1,000,000 miles from Earth, the Gaia Space Telescope is hard at work mapping the Milky Way. By feeding Gaia's data into computer models, scientists can simulate the past, present, and future of our entire 200 billion star galaxy. I'm Pedro Pascal. Join me on a journey through our tight-knit stellar neighborhood into the bustling metropolis of the Milky Way. We'll witness some of the chance encounters that have shaped the destiny of our sun, and maybe even the course of life in the cosmos.
And just to show you the extent of our collaborations with scientists around the world, here are the list of scientific collaborators from the show. And then I just wanted to point out that we do ongoing research during production. We have an external evaluator who checked in with our audiences along the way to really make sure that we were making a show that was not only accessible, but highly entertaining. And I'll just leave you with a big snapshot of the group. All of these people played major roles in the production, and there were many more besides. So that is it.
Thank you so much, Vivian. And we do have time for some questions. I've got a few questions here already, and please do use the Q&A feature if you have some other questions as we go through. But Vivian, one of the questions while watching that, what's the hardest part about all of this? What's the hardest part about making a planetarium show?
There are so many hard parts. All the really good parts are hard parts. There is the time it takes to visualize the data in order to really understand the potential of the scene. But I would say the hardest part is figuring out what to leave out. We always start with many more scenes and many more story points and many more data sets that we can fit into the final production. And figuring out which scenes to cut out is usually the biggest struggle.
And how do you actually decide what to cut out? Is that like a big argument, a big fight between people?
Yeah, we arm
What's the
wrestle.
process?
Everyone gets to choose their favorite.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, it comes down to the story. So we are iterating on the script at the same time that we are creating these visualizations, and it's a back and forth. We discover something new, a new opportunity in the visualization, we fold it into the script. We discover a storytelling opportunity, and we look for a chance to support it with the visuals. And I think at the end of the day, the science is so rich, we could make these shows 2 hours, but we want to support the story. And so it's at the end of the day, the story trumps the different scientific points. So we choose the things that support the narrative the best.
And how long does this whole process take? From day one right to the premiere when the show is actually screening for the first time? How long does this take?
It's about 2 years. It takes a few months, let's say a 6-month period when we're really deciding which proposal to develop, what our storyline is. We start to think about the funding, how to put that together, and we start to think about the staffing, who we want to bring on for the show. And then we have 18 months to really lock down the production pipeline. We work with our in-house engineering team to lock down the technical infrastructure that we need to create the show. We bring on the staff and we start the research into the data sets. And then it's about 12 months of really full production, of starting to work with the sound designers and the composer, and bringing on our full artist crew.
And the actual the simulations that you do, what software do we use as we're making this show or these shows?
Primarily Houdini, which is a software that scientists are starting to use as well. It's Python based, and it's used in Hollywood. It's used for commercials. It's a very robust visualization platform and lends itself very well to scientific data visualization.
One thing I was thinking as I was looking at the Milky Way that we have in this encounters in the Milky Way, it is so different from the very first Milky Way we had in Passport to the Universe. And when you look at that and you look at this new one that we have, it's a massive difference. Are there other differences that you've seen in the sort of the planetarium world, the show production world over the past 15, 20 years?
I mean, I think there's definitely more dynamics. In the past, to create a collision, to visualize simulation was a big, 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 big deal. And now we're doing that in many, many, many more scenes. I mean, the happy truth is it's gotten easier to make these shows. The data sets we're working with have gotten bigger and more complex, so they're still making it challenging. But the graphics cards are faster. The software packages are more sophisticated. This kind of visualization is becoming an art, not just in the sciences, but in other areas as well. And so the software packages in the pipeline, I think, supports our processes much more robustly than they did 20 years ago.
I'm also thinking of the even just on the distribution side, we used to distribute shows on like a 1 TB portable hard drive, and now it can be like a 22, 25 TB drive for the 8K 60 frames per second. Kind of amazing.
Right. So the projection systems themselves has gotten more sophisticated. So we went from I think the early shows were 3K at 30 frames a second, and now we're doing 8K at 60 frames a second. So somebody else can do the math, but it's a lot more pixels.
Where will the madness stop? I don't want to see 16K and 120 frames, but one day. What is one thing that you think can be forgotten about during the production process? Like what is one really important thing as you're working through that is sometimes forgotten?
That we're making a movie for the public. We're not making this for the scientists. Sometimes, and I count myself among this, we're collaborating so closely with scientists. Sometimes they become our audience and they get very excited about things that are very meaningful to them. but which might not be meaningful at all to a general audience that don't know enough to appreciate it. And so this balance of really bringing the science to life and being true to the science, while also creating something that is publicly accessible and entertaining, and just it's a good movie. It's an immersive movie. That's what we're making. Um, Sometimes you can lose sight of that.
And talking about the scientists that you work with, how do we find the scientists that have the data, and how do we sort of get them to come on board?
Well, getting them to come on board is easy. They are really, I don't think in my experience I've ever encountered a scientist who wasn't eager to work with us. Um, what we bring to them is a chance to bring their science to life. And of course, they all get access to the visualizations that we create together that they can use for their outreach with their peers and with the public. Um, but it is so exciting to them to come to the planetarium and to see their science writ large. And there is a difference between visualizing it as part of the research experience and visualizing it in this cinematic way where it has not only scientific uh, meaning, but also emotional meaning and power. And so for them, it's a terrific opportunity. And they can report it on their NSF grant that their work is featured in our space show, which for them is terrific because it has such reach with the public. The way we find these scientists are usually with uh, it starts with the curator. So Jackie certainly had many prior relationships with these scientists. But for others, we ask two friends and they ask two friends, and we just do outreach in the scientific community. For some shows, we've had scientific colloquia where we bring scientists to AMNH for 2 days to hash out like what stories we can tell and what data sets exist. But now we sort of do that asynchronously. But it is just like researching anything else. You go into the field, you find out who's working on what, and you leverage all of your personal relationships to find the best match.
And we've just got a few minutes left, but I'm keeping an eye on all the questions that are coming in. Another one is, can you talk about writing the script, and then also as you're doing that, how you aim the content of the show, like including the vocab, like how are you writing the script for all of these different ages and audiences as well?
Sure. Well, for this show, we had a wonderful writer, Laura Mustakursky, who is on staff at the museum. And she is a terrific, very thorough researcher, but very good at writing for a general audience. At the museum, everything we do, all of our exhibits, are aimed at, we call it a general audience. So we think of it as adults or children with families or caretakers. So we would like small children to get something out of this experience, but maybe it needs a little bit of interpretation by adults. We really are, we're aiming for that sweet spot. And I think it's a lot easier to do in a planetarium show than it is necessarily to do in a written label deck, let's say. These shows, visually and sonically, they carry a big message and so much information that is absorbed through our many different senses. But when we're thinking of vocabulary, we try to use words that are commonly understood, or at least contextualize them where they can be commonly understood. And that is something that our evaluators check. We give them lists of questions if we're wondering about vocabulary. They can check with audiences directly regarding their comprehension about certain terms and certain words.
Well, I think we've got time for just one more question. And as a reminder to everyone, we will have a recording of this available, which we sent to everyone who was on this webinar. And it's from me. This is hard. This is hard work, right? It's not easy. You got all these people, all these personalities, all these scientists, all this data, everything. What's the most fun part about all of this?
The fun part is always seeing it come together. The fun part is seeing people's reactions to the show. For me, the fun part, I love being in the dome at night while we're mixing, because that's really when the show comes alive in real time. We're we're finessing the final renders of the video, and so we're taking a scene that might look pretty good one day, and all of a sudden we're looking at it in all its detail and all its glory with all of the audio that we're attaching to it. And all of a sudden the show comes from a work in progress that you can kind of tell is going to be good, or, to something that is alive, and just is always surprising in some way. So I love being surprised by our shows, because that has happened every single time.
That's great. Well, congratulations on making so many amazing shows. Thank you for sharing all of this with us. If anyone has questions that they couldn't get to, feel free to reach out to me. You can reply to the link when we send it, for example, and we'll get back in touch. But thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Vivian, and I
Thank
hope you all have
you.
a great weekend. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.